Today we're talking roses, and that's brought to you with the support of Cobra Garden and King Seeds. Hello and welcome to Pots and Trowels. Well, regular viewers will remember that back in late winter, early spring, I planted a bare root rose in our new garden, a variety called Harlow Carr, which is a modern shrub rose. And here we are at Harlow Carr in North Yorkshire, the garden that it's named after. And this is a group of the very same rose here. So this is it. Harlow Carr, and it's a lovely double rose. It's fragrant. When it's in bud, it's a deeper pink, and then gradually it opens and it fades to this pink here, and it's a beautiful flower. As you can see, these rose bushes here are full of flower and lots of buds still to come. And if you want to see how that bare root rose was planted, then of course you can find that on our YouTube channel. Just look back and the video will be there. And also a little reminder that we also have a weekly podcast called Pots and Trowels where we talk all things gardening.
There are some really lovely colours, from very pale pastel colours to some really deep reds.
And you can get that from your normal provider. And what they've done here is they planted Harlow Carr as part of a bigger rose garden, but also a mixed border. So we've got lots of herbaceous plants at the back. We've got delphiniums to come. We've got all sorts of things. We've got this lovely Nepeta as an edging along the front. And then these rather spectacular late flowering alliums with these unusual heads on the top like that. So all part of a mixed border, and it looks great. So what I'm going to do is wander into the main rose area. We'll look at some of the roses and just give you a few tips on what to do and how to keep them healthy at this time of the year. The majority of these roses in these rose beds, and they're all lovely mixed colours. We've got creams and apricots and pinks and reds. They're all what we call repeat flowering, and they will continue to produce roses right the way through the summer, from June, often through September, and even longer if we get a mild autumn. But to encourage them to produce more flowers, we need to do something that we call deadheading, and that is to remove the flowers when they fade, so all the energy can then go into producing more flowers. And there's various ways we can do that, and this is a good example, a couple of examples here of how you can do it, because what we've got on this one here, as you can see, this flower has started to go over. In fact, it has gone over, but this one is still looking good. So two things you can do with this. One is you could either snap it off, and if I just show you on this one just here, if you get the flower there just below the flower where it's swollen, they snap really, really easily. So you could go round and you can just snap some of these old heads off. But if you don't want to leave a little stalk, then what you can do is get your secateurs and just trim it down. So we've taken a nice clean cut, leaving that remaining stem to flower. And then when that one is finished, we can cut it down further. So it's just going around, taking the dead heads off. And that, with this type of rose, not only makes it look neater, but what it also does is it then helps to encourage another flush of flowers. So it more or less keeps them flowering continuously. So if I just put those there and pick them up in a minute. But another way you can do it, and this is the way I was taught, sort of with hybrid teas and multiflora roses, I was taught this way when I was a young gardener. This rose here produces just one rose on a stem. So you could go ahead and just take that one rose off, but then you've still got a long stem. And what happens is these buds will grow and produce a flower later on in the summer, but the rose gets taller and taller. So the way I was taught many years ago is to go down the rose about halfway down the stem and cut it just above a bud like that. Clean cut, and then it will be from this bud in there that a new stem will grow, and in a few weeks time we'll start to get some more rose buds. So you can snap the red roses off, you can snip them off, or you can take the stems a little bit further down. The other thing to think about also at this time of the year is a little bit of feeding. Now hopefully in the spring you will have probably put a mulch around the plants of compost or manure if you can get it, just to add some organic matter to the soil, and maybe a little bit of general fertiliser. But usually about halfway through the season, roses very often, if the soil is losing its nutrition, give them an extra boost, and just a little bit of a rose fertiliser or blood, fish and bones sprinkled around the base will keep them growing and help to promote not only healthy growth but more flowers. And if you get a little bit of black spot, and some roses get it more than others, then don't worry too much. I mean, this is a little bit of black spot on this rose just here, like this, and this is a fungal disease. If you've got a lot of black spot, then one of the things that you can do is just snap some of those off. Don't put them in your compost bin because we don't want to spread the spores. So we would get rid of these into your council recycling bin that takes them away, or if you have a little bonfire incinerator, get rid, but certainly not the compost heap. And that's a good way to help control it without it getting out of hand. So just go around, take off any infected leaves like that. You can, if you really want to, use a fungicide, but I only like to use that as a very last resort. And I find by pruning to keep the rose bush open, by making sure it's got enough nutrients to produce nice, healthy, strong growth, and by just going around picking these off, then you can prevent the spread of black spot on most roses and keep them growing. And hopefully with just a little bit of TLC and checking our roses and a bit of deadheading and a little bit of summer pruning, we can maintain a wonderful display like this all the way through the summer months and into early autumn. The roses are looking beautiful at the moment, and this is another one that we've also planted in our garden. This real pale yellow single flowering rose called Tottering by Gently, and it is a really lovely rose, and again it flowers and flowers if you keep it deadheaded. And I see another one just over there behind Jill called Ballerina, which is sort of a mound forming low shrub rose that's got lots and lots of very small pink flowers on there, and again keeps flowering and flowering and flowering. So they are beautiful to see in a setting like this, whether it's a dedicated rose bed or it's a mixed bed with shrubs and grasses in there. But as well as looking at them in the garden, it's always nice to pick a few blooms and just admire them in the house. And just to give us a few tips on how to get the best of them, I'm going to find Jonathan Moseley, who's going to tell us how to get the best out of our roses. Beautiful roses, Jonathan. So how do we get the best of them in the house when we've cut them from the garden?
Yeah, they're quite a challenging flower sometimes, Martin, because it's such a short season, our rose season. But first top tip is I always take a bucket with some water in. So the minute I'm cutting, they go straight into that water.
Okay.
That prevents them from getting an airlock forming.
Right.
And then I always remove leaves, so we'll get rid of most of those lower leaves. I leave a leaf at the top because that actually helps draw the water up the stem. Now, luckily, this one's not got any thorns on, so it's quite kind to the hands. But some varieties, of course, are a little bit more thorny. So you can, if you want, just snap away it and just get rid of those little thorns that are on there.
This is a lovely one. We've got this in our garden.
Me
this
too.
Is it Lady of Shalott?
Lady of
Isn't
Shalott,
it beautiful?
absolutely. It's so stunning. But you know what, Martin? If you're picking at this stage, you can expect probably a day, maybe 2 days for it to last. I would go for picking at this sort of stage.
Okay.
And then the beauty is you can actually watch that rose start to mature in water. I would always put some flower food in the water.
Okay.
Because that's going to feed it and help that flower expand and get to its maximum size. But stage of picking is crucial because if you're picking, for example, at this sort of stage, that's a little bit too young, slightly too immature. And that will probably not die, but neither will it open. It will just sit there.
And what will happen to these little buds here? So they won't open
out. They're too young.
So you want the flower to sort of be really starting to open.
That sort of stage.
Okay.
And sometimes with roses, and this is just how garden roses are, you do sometimes see some petal damage underneath. And these are what in floristry we call guard petals, and you can remove these just to sort of perfect the rose a little bit. And if you just bend those down horizontally and just nip them at the base of the rose, they will just then pull away.
I see. So you're almost plucking them off.
Just plucking them off. This won't damage the flower in any way, but certainly if you wanted to give these as a gift, or you wanted to wear it as a buttonhole or a corsage, you don't really want those damaged petals to be visible, so just snap those away to remove them.
Okay.
And it looks 100 times better.
And what about cutting them? I see you know, when you're putting them, prepared them, do you then need to make a special cut at the bottom to get the water to go up?
And, you know, I think what you cut with is crucial, because I always cut with my floristry scissors because they're great for cutting rose stems. But what you need to do, ideally, if you can cut with a knife, and you could do this when you get them indoors, just cut on a nice slant, nice diagonal cut there, and then scrape away. And if you scrape away into that inner core, about 2 centimetres, then a lot more water will permeate into that stem, travel up the stem, hit the rose, keep it hydrated.
So I can't really use my secateurs to do that?
Bit heavy duty those, Martin. Great for sort of pruning, but not for actually picking the blooms themselves.
So we're expecting probably, you know, from a few days to maybe a week or so if you're picking them like that?
Yeah, certainly a week at that stage. At this sort of stage, probably about 5 days. They're not long lasting as a cut flower or garden rose, unlike floristry roses, of course, which are designed to last. But there's something beautiful about bringing that fragrance
Absolutely,
indoors.
All right.
Absolutely stunning.
Top tips. Thank you, Jonathan.
Welcome.
Well, thank you for watching Pots and Trowels. And if you are in North Yorkshire in the near future, I can highly recommend a visit here to Harlow Carr, where the gardens are looking beautiful, especially these wonderful candelabra primulas. We're back in the garden again next week, so we'll see you then. Bye. Jill, come and have a sit down.